أهل البيت الثالثة على صوت.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونشكره ونستعينه ونتوب إليه من سيئات أعمالنا، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. اللهم صل
على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. قال الإمام الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام في وصية لأخيه محمد بن الحنفية: إني لم أخرج عشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما، وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي رسول الله، أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر، فمن قبلني بقبول الحق فالله أولى بالحق، ومن رد علي هذا أصبر حتى يقضي الله بيني وبين القوم بالحق وهو خير الحاكمين. This part or segment is related or narrated by historians to be part of the wasiyya or advice or statement that Imam Hussain salawatullah salam alayhi made the last night that he was coming out of Medina. Historians claim that after confrontation with the governor of Medina, he decided to go to the tomb of the Holy Prophet and visited the tomb of his brother Imam Hassan, and came back to the house commanding everyone to start to pack up because we are leaving. Muhammad ibn Hanafiya is half-brother of Imam Hussain, is among those individuals. We have talked about Ma'rifatul Imam, that unfortunately, despite the fact that he was the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, but in-depth understanding of meaning of Imamah and the role of Imamah, he lacked. So he came to advise Imam Hussain that he shouldn't go to Kufa or Karbala. He should take a path to Yemen and stay over there until some kind of a strong political base could be established, that he then can use it as a base and a foundation for rising up against Bani Umayyah. Imam gives him this advice, literally a statement of intention, that my rising up is not for this, first of all, it's not a vain act, it's not to grab power, but there is a clear, just purpose for this uprising. أريد, first of all, خرجت لطلب الإصلاح, to correct the society. The social structure is broken down and I need to fix it. في أمة جدي أريد, but what's the strategy? أريد أن آمر بالمعروف, the concept of نهي عن المنكر and أمر بالمعروف, and those who would accept me فمن قبلني, without Imam knows that without a clear group of people that will stand by him and accept him for the path of justice that he's taken, he will not succeed. Then, if they accept me, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the guide, and if they don't, then I will do whatever I wait until the resolution of the end. Now, last night, as I intended tonight to wrap up the concept of life of the characteristics of Imam Hussain, because every time I say I need to focus on it, I kind of distracted by other concepts and it goes on. There is an expression in Arabic language that says al-kalam yajurru al-kalam. You want to focus on something and then another issue comes in, you drift. Before you know it, you haven't said about the original theme and then you move into a different. Last night I presented two concepts to guide us through the importance or reach the importance of the character of understanding the character of Imam Hussain. The first one was the concept of history and how do we establish history, how do we understand history, and whether our role in the construction or the formation of history is a positive one or a passive one. Do we accept history from an Islamic point of view simply because it is some kind of predestined event that has to take place and we have no other option but to be simply riding the ride as the history unpacks itself? I said that Quran rejects this concept. Although Quran admits or maintains that there are laws that governs the whole universe, including history, and that laws Quran identifies as Sunanullah. The Sunanullah, these fundamental principles that governs everything. But these fundamental principles are not such that we have no say in the formation of it. It's contingent or conditional on how do we behave. And I said, if we want to make history, Quran says that if you want to make history and change it, you really have to operate within, be mindful of these principles, of divine principles in nature or in history, but at the same time be mindful of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala miraculously is not going to change things if we don't change ourselves. So on the one hand, Sunnatullah allati qad khalat min qabl, and on the other hand, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. We have to go between these two. And when it comes to the construction of history, so you need two things: proper rulers or leaders, and our own behavior towards our own responsibility. We could either be negative and don't discharge our responsibility, and the history is going to unpack in a negative way, or take up the responsibility seriously and with the existence of the leader, then we will change the society in a positive manner. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullah salamu alayhi, when he took up the Khilafah, he clearly stated that Allah has commanded the good leaders, the just leaders, once there are enough individuals to support them, to rise. Short of that, and there is a hadith that I was searching through a hadith, I came across it, that the Holy Prophet advised Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salamu alayhi, if you see enough people within the Sahaba, within those who respect you and understand who you are, that you think with their presence you can change the reality after my demise, then rise. Otherwise, fasbir, be patient. Imam Hussain says the same thing in this wasiyah, that so long as there are people that would support me, I would move forward. If there are no one around, then I have no other alternative to be patient. And when it comes to understanding historical figures, the leaders, characters that they are not present now in the past, I have kind of identified two methods or two strategies. Number one, to rely on what we call historical records, books of history, that we have both Shias and Sunnis. Within these books of history, they tell us, let's say for the sake of argument, we are talking about the character of Imam Hussain, who Imam Hussain was. Unfortunately, narratives or books of history or historical records are insufficient to give us a clear picture of the person for a variety of reasons, both political, social, and everything else. Nothing more than reliance on what we call biographical issues, but they don't talk much about the character of Imam Hussain that is needed for us so that we can understand who he was. The second strategy is to look at the values that these people stood for, and they were ready to give up their lives for the sake of those values, and then use those values to see whether they are of holy character or not. When somebody comes to Kufa after signing a peace treaty with Imam Hassan, Muawiyah, and goes up the minbar and says, I did not sign a peace treaty with Imam Hassan, I did not sign a peace treaty because I wanted you to pray or fast or anything else. Because you already do that. I signed the peace treaty so that I rule over you. Now, the objective becomes quite clear and the character of this individual becomes clear. Now, compare that to say, إني لم أخرج عشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح. It's totally different. Here, I want to alert you with something which is critical. Every year, as we approach the month of Muharram, and as we get closer to the day of Ashura, Shia commemoration around the world, particularly in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and a few other countries, are attacked by the Wahhabis, by Sunni extremists in their own country. Every year, you wait until, God forbid, inshallah, this year it's not going to happen. But every year, Tasu'a and Ashura, the majalis and the commemorative events are attacked because they are considered to be bid'ah. The whole concept of Ashura is nothing but figmentation of Shia imagination. It's some kind of distortion of history, etc., etc. If you look at what these Sunnis consider as a history of Karbala, you see it that it's totally different from the way we present it. They rely primarily on two sources, Ibn Kathir and Ibn Hajar, their historical record. And the gist of what they talk about Ashura and the whole incident before it and after are as follows. Muawiyah dies. Nothing about the character of Muawiyah. Muawiyah is a member of Ashra Mubashara and Sahaba, then he is holier than holy. Yazid is appointed as a successor, comes to power. He wants allegiance from everyone and sends a letter to governor in Medina to secure that allegiance. They admit that Yazid may not have been an ideal ruler, because there might be other people better than him, but once he is in power, then any challenge is against the law, because it really leads to disunity within the society. The message is relayed to Hussain ibn Ali. And after a little discussion, it is settled that Hussain will give allegiance in public the next day. But Hussain leaves Medina in the middle of the night, which was a rash decision by him to make. Yazid sends Ibn Ziyad, once he understands that Hussain is going to Mecca and from there going to Kufa. And again, this might have been a rash decision from Yazid's side to send Ibn Ziyad, because Ibn Ziyad is not a good, well-known for his irrational decisions. Ibn Ziyad gathers the army, confrontation takes place, leading to the killing of Hussain against the true wish of Yazid. Yazid didn't want Imam Hussain to be killed. It was Ibn Ziyad's decision. Hussain was rash in walking to his death, driven by desire to assume power. This desire led him to death. You see how history could be distorted by omission, not just by injection of something which is not right. By omission, you forget about all the statements that Imam Hussain made. From the moment he leaves, there was no discussion. It was a confrontation with the Wali of Medina, governor of Medina. Don't you know the character of Yazid? It's all silent. Nobody says anything about it. So these people, this is the image of the uprising that they have. And they are constantly repeated to their children, themselves, and so on. Any other narrative that is presented by Shia against this, that analyzes, there is a story that clearly defines. In the battle of Khawarij in Nahrawan, Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wasalam alayhi sends Ibn Abbas to go and talk to Khawarij. He goes, after half an hour, comes back, shivering or shaking. He says, "What's the matter, Ya Ibn Abbas?" He said, "I just came back from a group of people that late night sujda has made the dead skin in front of their forehead, and the tears that they shed during the night has made a channel on their skin. How can I say these people are out?" And Khawarij. You see how weak character he is? He says, "Ya Ibn Abbas, اعرف الحق تعرف أهله." If you want to understand who's on the right path, who's on the wrong path, first understand what is the right path. If you are trying to extricate the right path from a group of people, you are misguided. Haven't you heard, "Aliyun ma'al haqq wal haqqu ma'a Ali"? Yes. Then by this statement from the Holy Prophet, clearly they are on batil because they are standing against Ali. Have you forgotten about it? This distortion by omission, washing up literally the history. That the notion that Yazid did not want the killing of Hussain to take place, only constructed when the event of confrontation between Yazid and Zainab sallallahu alayha in Sham took place. Historians, what we call court scholars, began to write something to use the court, whitewashing the whole event, that Yazid didn't want this to happen, it was Ibn Ziyad's fault. Dump the blame on Ibn Ziyad. Now this is, if you are subjected or bombarded or brainwashed by this type of story, then naturally anything else against it, particularly if you say it's written in Bukhari or if it's written in this or that, it becomes holier than holy and there is nothing we can do about it. Nobody challenges. And suddenly they are confronted by somebody that says, Muawiyah is mal'oon, Yazid is mal'oon because of X, Y. Now the criteria of values are introduced into the discussion, and we say, first we understand the values and then we judge people, rather than simply because it exists in a book. Otherwise, if we want to go to the book, let's go back to the Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and see how the character of the Holy Prophet is depicted and presented within Sahih Bukhari. There are a number of hadith exist that the Holy Prophet used to stand on the corner of the road, public highway, and urinate. And Omar, who else? Omar used to stand behind him and give him a break of water for tathir. And the Holy Prophet says that I wasn't brought that I do have to do tathir every time I urinate. No wonder some of these ahadith are called literally pornographic. Look at the ahadith from Aisha about how the relationship, the intimate relationship with the Holy Prophet. So, alaykum salam. What we really need to know is أعرف الحق تعرف أهله. If we want to understand the characters, whether contemporary or the past, it's not an individual by the way he or she looks, whether he's wearing a black turban, large one, small one, no turban at all. First, understand what is haq, what is just, what is unjust, and then decide who's on the right path. So here, we need to start. There is no way we can talk about the character of Imam Hussain salawatullah salam alayhi without speaking a little bit about the biographical issue. Imam Hussain salawatullah salam alayhi's life can be divided into certain phases. The first phase is from birth, which is 3rd of Sha'ban, year 4th after Hijrah, until the death of the Holy Prophet, beginning of the year 11. Approximately 7 years. The most crucial years of what we call in the contemporary analysis of child development is those 7 years, the first 7 years. And the guidance a child receives during that period. If you have your role model, the Holy Prophet, deals with you in a manner, brings you up in which you become the embodiment of the values that he thought critical in his life. This is why he says, Husaynun minni wa ana min Hussain. We both are the same thing. I had a risala, a mission. The mission was to establish justice on earth. The same thing, my grandson has the same mission. During my life, I stood for justice, he's going to stay for justice. All the values that I have in my life has been injected, so to speak, in this child, or this child has become the embodiment, personification of those values, that there is no difference between the two. We see the same kind of hadith regarding Amir al-Mu'mineen that says, أَنْتَ الرُّوحِيَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْنِ. Because he was the one that brought up Ali. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I used to follow the Holy Prophet like a small baby camel following his mother. Wherever he went, I went. I could hear the sound of wahy and revelation coming to him. The Holy Prophet used to sit and teach me all kinds of information and knowledge. So the result is that he become the full embodiment, if I may borrow a phrase from Christianity, the incarnation, but not in the sense that exists that God comes in or the Holy Prophet incarnated. No, he becomes incarnation of the value system. The most critical period. For those of you who are parents, this period is the most critical as well. There is a hadith that you should pray and work hard for Khalaf al-Salih. What does that mean, Khalaf al-Salih? It's not a wishful thinking. It's a proactive responsibility. If you want your child After you sniffed the last breath and you passed away, for the child to pick up the mantle of your values and moral principles that you stood for and you had dear to your life, you have to work as hard as possible to instill these values in their life. Otherwise, Khalaf Salih by default is not going to happen. But you have to do it in a manner. You have to be mindful that this child is going to be living in a time that you as parents are not going to be around. The fundamental principles and values have to be given, and the freedom to be given through argument and discussion so that they are able to define the new strategy of taking your principles and moving, carrying on with it. If you don't do that, they will drift. How many times in my short life, whether here or in other cities, I have had people coming in, Mulana, I have a problem with my son, I have a problem with my daughter. At the age of 13, goes to the first school or the first class about Western philosophy, comes back home and says, there is no God. Everything that you have been talking about is just rubbish. Fiction, stories, myth. So this section or phase of Imam Hussein's life is absolutely critical in defining the character to come in the future. The Holy Prophet spent huge amount of time with Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain, bringing them out, constantly taking them with him. Imam in a person is directly related to the depth of the impact that your role model has on you. If the impact on your life is very shallow, superficial, then Iman is very weak. There's a huge scope here to discuss this concept. If you reach a point in which the imitation of the role model, you consider it footstep, you follow them footstep. What Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was telling the other guy who came from Khurasan and said, we have 100,000 people ready for your command. And Imam said, what kind of a person? Go into the tanur. He said, wait, in tanur is fire, I'm flesh, I'm going to die. He said, do you think I don't understand that? He said, come on. Then Zurara comes in. He says, Ya Zurara, idkhul al-tanur, without a question. Removes the cover, goes in. Now this guy has come from Khurasan. He thought, that's it. Zurara is gone. After a few minutes, ukhruj ya Zurara. Zurara comes out of the tanur. Little bit dusty, but Zurara is Zurara. Then Imam turns to him. He says, how many like him do you have in Khurasan waiting for our command? He said, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, none. We need for the Imam to come back 330 metaphorically using the language, or exact, a short group of people that are prepared to commit and submit to the command of the Imam. If you can bring up your children in the early phase of their life in a manner that they embody your values, then you can be secure that inshallah in the future they are going to be Khalaf Salih. If there is no effort made during the early time, or for the sake of comfort zone, give them whatever they want and let them watch whatever they want, their mind is going to be twisted anyway. So Ibrahim existed, or every messenger, every role model, Uswa, lives twice, whether in a major manner or a small. Ibrahim is an Uswa, according to the Quran. First, he lives once as his own material life on earth. The second life is on those mu'mineen, or those who believed in him and embodied these values, and they became the manifestation of Ibrahim after his death. As father, the same thing. I live once as a father. My son, I would live in his life, the embodiment of my life, if I succeed in passing and parting this knowledge of values and moral principles to him, and make him able to stand, to have a solid ground. The Holy Prophet did the same thing with Ali, Fatima, Hassan, Hussain. Ashab al-Kisa, وَطَهَّرَهُمْ تَطْهِيرًا, that you just heard it, it's because of that. So the first phase happens. He embodies the Risala, the gist of the Risala, and we know that the Holy Prophet was the essence of Quran. Quran as a message in a text, the living example of it is the Holy Prophet during his life. And Amir al-Mu'mineen claimed to be the essence, the soul of Quran during Battle of Siffin. When they put the Quran on the spears, he said, "Ana al-Quran al-Natiq." Because he embodies the values of Quran, the moral principle of the Holy Prophet. After the Holy Prophet, short period of time with his mother, then his father, where he submitted and followed. He participated in life under the command of and auspices of his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, was with him until his martyrdom, stayed with his brother after the incident in Kufa, and the last 10 years of his life before Karbala was his Imam. Now, quickly, because of the time, a brief look at the values in his life. I want to remind you, in most cases, we have people talking about non-Muslims citing the life of Imam Hussain as the exemplar, not because they are aware of what happened in Ashura and Yazid and uprising and what happened to them. It's the value system that they depict and represent. When Gandhi challenges the British Empire in India, he cites who? Hussain ibn Ali. Never give in. Challenge, stay upright for justice. When Nehru and Muhammad Ali Jinnah and others, they talked about the freedom, they cite Hussain ibn Ali. When Christians talk about exemplary historical figures that everyone can learn from it, they come to Ahlul Bayt, either Ali or Hussain. Why? Because it was so unique. Whether we accept what happened or not, as far as the narrative of his life, one thing we can be sure of, the Sunni scholars or the Shia scholars, it doesn't matter. The resistance to oppression in all form is absolute principle for Imam Hussain. Look at Karbala, before Karbala, in the slogans that I'm not going to prepare to give you my hand like dhalil. أعطيكم يدي إعطاء الدليل ولا أفر فرار العبيد. And I'm not going to run away. I have a social responsibility to stand for justice, and I will stand by it until I give up. I give in my life. Resistance to oppression in all form. Have hope and trust in Allah and never give in and never to be despondent. This is something that we can learn in our life. To stand for social justice and equality. ألا ترون أن الحق لا يعمل به وأن الباطل لا ينهى. Don't you look at your society, how dysfunctional it has become? If you want to follow Ahlul Bayt, you want to follow Hussain, you come to the majalis. Once you come out at the end of the day, remember that fighting social injustice is your responsibility. Because the Imam of the time now, the other discussions that we've had a couple of nights ago, now it's our turn to be mindful of our mission in life. Our mission in life is not to become rich. That is granted. We need to work, we need to earn a living, that's necessary. But that's not the mission. Strange when we look at the concept of economics in Islam. Islam has a unique view and lens when it comes to economic. It makes a distinction between possession and ownership. You work hard during your life and build a fortune in the bank. You don't own it, you possess. You have a house, it's a possession. You have a car, too many cars, Rolls Royces and Bentleys and so on, you only possess them. You don't own it. What's the difference? Your possession you leave behind the moment Israel comes, let's go. None of them will come with you. Ownership is what you give it to, for the sake of Allah, to the poor and the needy and everything else. Then it is written under your name. You carry it with you until the hereafter. So don't be deceived and deluded by the wealth and everything else, material life. It's only a possession. When Abdullah ibn Umar came to Imam Hussain the last night again, trying to advise him, he reminded him how worthless life, material life is. He said, may I remind you, the head of Yahya, the prophet, was severed and given to the lowest woman in society at that time, a prostitute. That's how life is. Material life is worthless. Is his Jude when somebody Shami from Sham that came to Medina to insult him, he says, I take it that you are a stranger in this city. My house is open, you can come in and live with us as a guest. Look what transformation this kind of akhlaq can make in your وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Why? Because this mujadala bil-akhlaq turns your enemies around. These are the strategies we should learn. Jude, akhlaq, tawadu. These are things that we should learn from Imam Hussain. Ibadah. Go and read Dua Arafah. And you understand the submission, absolute submission of Imam Hussain before Allah. The concept of Tawheed that he presents like his father. Mata ghibta, in part of the portion of Dua Arafah. Hatta tahtaja ila dalilin yadullu alayk. Those who search for a dalil or a proof for your existence, they have lost the path. You never went away so I need some kind of a proof to establish you. وَمَتَى بَعُدْتَ حَتَّى تَكُونَ الْآثَارِ هِيَ الَّتِي تُوصِلُ. You're always close. خَسَرَ صَفْقَةُ عَبْدٍ. He turns the concept of Tawheed and Ma'rifatullah into a love story. خسرت صفقة عبد لم تجعل له من حبك نصيبا. Abd, a servant that doesn't have that absolute love for you, or at least doesn't have a portion of it, that life is worthless. Look at what he does during Karbala, Ashura. He has given everything for the sake of God. I'm going to go to see my beloved with nothing, absolute nothing. Even the 6-month-old child, I'll give it. And then he puts his head on the ground, rhythm, absolute submission. It's narrated from some of these Kufis that they said the more time went on, and the more situation became grave, we saw the face of Hussain gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and calmer and calmer. When Ali Akbar comes back and says, even if we were to accept this kind of narrative, which I don't, that Ali Akbar comes and says, Al-Atashu qad qatala. I don't believe it. It's just, these are stories metaphorically created. But the response, Asbir ya bunay, be patient. It's only a matter of few minutes, and you will meet your grandfather and the Holy Prophet and your grandmother, etc. Absolute submission. Ma'rifatul Imam means to understand, not the biographical one, because biographical record by default is incomplete. You have your own narrative, and the other side has its own narrative that I mentioned. But you can't argue in front of anyone. Says, look at the character of Hussain. And then you tell me which one is better, Yazid or Hussain. I think these are lessons that we should learn from the majalis of Imam Hussain. Tomorrow, inshallah, I intend, and I'm not going to continue with it, I intend to for the theme of relationship between Qiyam of Karbala and Qiyam al-Mahdi, and see how the two work together. The overlaps, differences, and so on. But if we really want to learn something from majalis, the value system. When the United Nations is searching around the world to find a statement that adequately represent the responsibility of a ruler vis-a-vis the servant, I mean the community, where do they go? The letter of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamu alayhi to Malik al-Ashtar. Say, this has to be translated and everyone to understand. What can a just ruler and the vision of a just ruler can do to the society? That your subjects are of two types. And we have seen repeatedly this is discussed. Either your brothers in faith or your brothers in humanity. This is a reduction, but it's a principle reduction. These are values that when we organize something about the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hussain, Imam Hassan, and the rest of the Ayyimah. These are something that we should learn. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the privilege, inshallah, of being among the true followers of Ahlul Bayt. And as usual, let's end by reciting Amma Nujib for the benefit of those who have difficulty and they are not, they suffer from some kind of ailment and sickness. Then we ask Allah to hasten the return of our living Imam, inshallah. Let's join together and recite Surah Amma Nujib. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amma Nujib أما نجيب المضطر إذا دعاه أما نجيب المضطر إذا دعاه السوء أما نجيب المضطر إذا دعاه السوء أما نجيب المضطر إذا دعاه السوء إلهي بحق محمد. Those people who have ailment, difficulty, challenges in their life, grant them peace, grant them shafa al-ajil, grant them what they want, and please guide us and lead us all to the right path. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.